Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. We're so happy to have you with us tonight. Tonight, I am joined by Liz Goll Lerner. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Liz. Liz has over 30 years of experience as a coach, counselor, and art therapist. A true pioneer, she's developed very highly respected, groundbreaking psychoeducational and therapeutic programs for her own practice and for health centers across the nation. Her passion is to ensure that all conversations, from the bedroom to the boardroom, create a world we all want to live in. I love this, and I love our topic tonight, high stakes conversations. And I think so many of us can relate to the conversations that have gone very wrong in our lives and felt unprepared. So I hope people are sitting there with a notebook for how to make this work better. So Liz, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So how about you just start with what would you consider a high stakes conversation, or what defines the high stakes conversation?
So, when I was preparing for having our conversation, I was thinking, aren't all of our conversations high stakes, right? Don't we really want every time we have a conversation for it to go well, especially if we're invested in something? When we talk about high stakes conversations from the bedroom to the boardroom, so we're talking about relationships, we're talking about work issues, we're talking about friendships, we're talking about, this is maybe not a high stakes conversation, but if we're talking about having the world, be a better place to live, kind of all our interactions with people, potentially are high stakes conversations, because it defines how we live in the world and how much joy or lack thereof
Right.
bring, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, what do you think gives people the most trouble in conversations? What are like the game changers for them?
I think there are a few really important blocks or things that really kind of go awry. And usually it's about being nervous. It's about, worrying about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, when you're going to say it, instead of being present in the moment, understanding what your goal is, what your vision is for the conversation, and just actually saying it. So people do a lot of preamble, right?
So, I can relate to that. I think I'm probably a preambler.
It's like, hey, I was kind of thinking about, and, maybe you're not going to like what I'm going to say, but maybe you will. And so then the anxiety, and that's just a light one, right? Like maybe the anxiety just starts building in both people, because like, oh my God, like what are they going to say to me? Why the buildup? Like what's going to happen here? And a lot of times it's because people are just trying to be really nice.
Yeah.
They might have something, a request they want to make of someone that they're in a relationship with, or a friendship, or need a favor, or have a problem that they want to talk about, and they don't know how to get into the subject. So it gets kind of edgy until they actually plant the actual topic on the table.
Right. Yeah. So how do you do that better? Just asking for a friend.
I think we're all that friend, right?
Yes, definitely.
So I think one thing is to plan ahead, right? If you know you're going to ask somebody for something, or that there's a problem that you want to talk about, or even if you want to talk to a higher up at your work, and you're asking for anything, a promotion, or going into a review, or wanting to make a change in your hours, especially now with COVID and everybody going back and forth and not knowing really what they're doing. When you know what you want, it's good to practice. If you're really nervous about a conversation, look in the mirror and just say it. Say it a bunch of times, prepare. have you show up the way you really want to show up, right? So you don't have to just plop yourself into the conversation. You can, you know, have a vision of how you want it to go, have a positive outcome in mind, be prepared if somebody isn't going to agree with you, know whether or not you're going to let your emotions take over, and make some decisions about how you want to show up and what you want to say. And all of that pre-work is a total recipe for success.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that because I've definitely done the opposite. the preambling, the emotional like charge, the anxiety leading up to the conversation and rehearsing the anxiety and things going wrong versus like you said, having like that good visualization of it working out better than you expected or exactly the way you want it to.
Right. And how do you end up if somebody isn't liking what you say? How do you end up being neutral instead of reactive? Right? Like being prepared for everything. Like, oh, they're going to love it. Yay, we can collaborate and move forward in some way. Or, wow, like I really don't like what you're saying and you're really hurting my feelings. And I can't believe you just said that to me. And then you say, oh, wow, like that was not my intention. I'm so sorry. Let's see how we can talk about this so you really understand where I'm coming from if you are able.
Yeah.
You might be too mad at me, and I hope not, but
yeah.
Right? Like it's not just about ourselves when we're in conversation. It's about compassion for the other person or not putting someone, if it's a boss, let's say an employer, not putting them so far higher up than you are that you can't possibly feel your power. We're all human. We're all, we have the same, concerns, thoughts, fears, triumphs, and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes sometimes makes the conversation a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I hear what you're saying too is being in the present moment.
Absolutely.
So really kind of you come in with what you want to say, you've rehearsed it, but then you're allowing the other person who may or may not have been prepared for what you were going to say to have that moment to experience it, but you don't have to react to their reaction. They get to have their reaction, but then you get to stay neutral.
Exactly. Because so even though we're all human, we are not the same. We're not each other. If I'm having a conversation with you and you react, I don't have to join you in whatever your reaction is, positive or negative or neutral. I don't have to take it on. I don't have to have it be a comment about me or my wish or my thought, because you're a separate person. You're going to have your own thoughts and reactions, and we get a little bit, it gets really complicated, right? When we believe that somebody should just agree with us, or when we take it personally if they don't. Or, but I want to go back to the present in the moment piece, because that's the trickiest part. And then there's another little piece that I think people need to dig into. But when you're thinking, you're not present. Right? If you're sitting, like here we are having our conversation, right? And if I'm thinking about my cat, I'm not listening to you. I'm not present with you. Right? Or thinking about my next errand, or thinking about what I did just before, or any of it, or what you're going to say next, or how I plan my next sentence. I'm not here with you.
Right.
I'm in my head.
Totally.
And I'm not in my body, and I'm not feeling into you, and you're not going to feel potentially a connection with me. Right?
Oh man, and you know how we do that the worst.
Yeah.
When this thing comes into play.
Oh yeah. Oh, distraction.
Right?
Oh, wait, let me just check. Oh, what were you saying?
I know.
You're not as important as my phone. What was
It's
that message? So one of the simplest, quickest, it's part of a technique I teach, but to get into your body and get present is to put all your attention on your feet.
I
Take a
like
breath,
that.
put all your attention on your feet, and just try it. Like, we're just going to put our attention on our feet. Know what, if a thought comes in, you just go to the feet. You feel your feet connected to the floor. You take a breath. You might even just do that for a sec. Take a breath. Doesn't look too weird. And here you are. Here we are. Like, I even just doing that for that second, I feel more present in my body and more present with you than I did a minute ago.
Yeah, I love
Try
that.
it.
Yeah, I did try it. And I really love that because I've used similar strategy like during presentations where you're presenting in front of a large group and
Right.
you don't want to be so in your head that you're just reading off of your PowerPoint. You want to be able to talk and engage with the audience. And so one of the things that I always do right before speaking is like really planting my feet into the ground, feeling connected and feeling like the presentation that I'm giving is part of a bigger picture and I'm just part of it.
Right.
And then I can't feel like that, like being under the microscope because I'm just
Right.
a piece of
Right.
the giant puzzle.
Exactly. I think another way to put it, at least in my world, is it's just not, your attention is not on you anymore. It's on the vision. It's on what you're doing. It's on the conversation. It's on the connection. But it's not about, what do I look like? What do I sound like? What's it going to be like? Right?
Yeah.
And that's the same in a conversation.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that there's so many reasons why getting into your body is important, but for our conversation, the reason that getting present and being in the body is so important is that from that position, we can be in neutral. We can actually have choice. If we're running a story and we're operating from that story and we're not in our bodies, we're kind of like a leaf in the wind. We're being reactive. We're not just like, oh, wait, am I really hearing what this person is trying to communicate to me? Or am I just in my story of what they're going to say next? Or am I in the last conversation we had?
Yeah.
Right? And
We've done
bringing
that too.
in. Because we do that all the time, right? Especially
Sure.
with partners, or it's like, oh yeah, I know what you're going to say. And it's like, no, actually you don't. You really don't. If you wait,
Yeah.
So that's, with really high stakes conversations, like, serious relationship conversations, or even conversations that companies have with each other who are trying to impact the planet, or countries. Here we have a serious situation going on in the world, right? And
here's some news about situation worldwide.
speaking of phones, Siri really likes
Siri
that
wants to comment on that. I love that.
Let me talk about the world. I'm trying to make it turn off.
Oh my goodness.
Siri just apologized. Is that hysterical?
That's hysterical. Thank you, Siri. Thank you, Siri. Siri wanted to comment on the serious nature of the world right now.
Everybody
I
wants
love
to get
it.
in on the communication.
Yeah. Right. Well, and you know what? How much of our lives are we communicating with
Through phone.
computer systems?
Right.
Right? Or texting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
That is
you
like
don't even get the visual.
no.
And let me just say this one, go back to that piece, and then that's really important, I think, because, let's do it. Because when people are having high stakes conversations in text, I have a lot of couples that I work with who actually are texting each other these really important things. Can you imagine the nuance that's lost and the interpretation that's assumed?
Yes.
You can't actually know what's happening on a text. Even regular, texting, people get really offended when, the phone does a correction.
Right. Oops.
Right?
Autocorrect.
Autocorrect, right? Exactly. But what I was going to say before about like serious conversations is that a lot of times there's a lot of emotional content. And what really ruins those game changer conversations sometimes is that you can be going on a script.
Yeah.
Like nonviolent communication is a wonderful method. But if somebody is using that technique, but emotionally they are fraught or they're expecting a negative outcome, then that the outcome of that conversation is tainted because we read all of that. We know as humans, we sense it, we see it in the eyes, we see it in the mouth, we see it in how we hold the body, right? So really being able to get present in the moment, go back into neutral, but also really work on what can come up in those really serious conversations so that you know what might push you in a direction that you don't want to go, or that might be perceived by somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So you really want to be in the body so that you have choice about what you're saying, how you're saying it, why you're saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking about the funny cell phone, But is that like that's just the kind of the tip of the iceberg about things that go wrong in our ordinary conversations.
Right.
Like one, we try to have it digitally versus like face to face where we have that.
Right.
But what else do we do in our ordinary conversations, that really, usurp the effectiveness of them?
Well, not listening was one.
Yeah.
Like being distracted. We kind of talked about that, but there's so many ways that people do that. Multitasking, trying to get to an end result before the conversations happened. Like pushing to the goal, but not really
Right.
hearing or taking the steps. I don't know, do you have some things in mind as well?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, and when I've gone wrong, like the things that you highlighted, the kind of keeping like right here the last conversation you had with someone and like waiting
dangerous.
for that like verbal assaults, like, oop, I'm gonna toss this one in here. Remember that time that you
Right.
And not. I really like what you said earlier on about having compassion for the person you're talking to when you're especially if you're bringing up something that maybe requires both of you to be vulnerable in some way. And that if you could have compassion for the other person and give them the gift of your presence and truly listening to what they have to say rather than just like the dump and run, which I think is like texting. You just kind of like get it out there and like, ghost.
Exactly. You don't have to be accountable. I mean, that's one of the things that with phones and texting, early on, people were really worried about with adolescents, is that they weren't learning how to actually be empathic and have a conversation face to face, or even on their phones that had connectivity and was relational. Right?
Definitely.
But I think, when you talk about bringing in that old conversation, I think that's such an important thing, because when we're doing that and we're not present in the moment, really, what we're actually doing, I found, is that we're responding to the person we're talking to now but we're responding as if we're in the old conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So if something was an irritant then, our tone is picking up the irritation from that conversation. That person that you're talking to now doesn't know it. So you sound irritated. They're not back in that conversation potentially.
Well, you just brought them there.
But you brought them there.
Right?
It's like, whoa, why are they being so, edgy with me, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
only if somebody says, hey, wait a minute, what? Did I miss something? Like, did something happen here that I don't know about? And why are you sounding like that? But how many people do it?
Mm-hmm.
How many people actually say, oh, they're mad at me. Why are they mad at me? But they don't say it out loud.
Right.
Right. And so, a lot of times we just don't have the awareness that
Yeah.
that could be happening. But you're sitting there feeling annoyed, but there's no reason in the conversation
Right. To be
feeling annoyed.
annoyed. Right.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
that's something to really look out for. Um,
Yeah. I'm definitely like picturing in my mind like moments when that happened.
mhm,
Or if you're like an overthinker, like I can tend to be, you overthought the conversation
right.
and you imagined the person responding in a certain way
Right.
and you're already feeling
Yeah.
a certain way in response to the way that
Your
you
own story.
to your own story.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. It happens a lot. I mean, a lot.
I'm a very creative writer in my own head. I come up with
And
very
that's the tricky thing, right?
yeah.
Because actually that controls so much of what we get worried about,
Mhm.
right? And how we're predictive. Like we that conversation's already happened in our
Mhm.
head. So why do we need to have it? Like we're already at the punchline, but we may be so wrong, like because it's all assumption. It's all our
Yes.
own fear. It's a story around our own fear or what we want or, you know, what we want to say and are afraid to say. And when we just take a breath and actually listen. So with my coaching and therapy clients, do a lot of active listening, helping them, figure out. And there is that if you ever feel like you've kind of lost yourself outside of a conversation, you're like, oh, where am I here? It's like you can really just say to somebody, if they say something to you, I hear you say that blah, 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 blah. Is that correct? And
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're back. You're in
Right.
it. They feel heard. They can correct you. You feel like you're there. You say what you want to say. And all of a sudden, all of that energy gets kind of like grounded and everybody's breathing. And because there's the pause,
Mhm.
right? There's, oh, you really heard me. Right? That's communication is feeling like somebody really heard you,
Yeah.
cares about what you're saying, caring about what they're saying, to move you either just to have that experience, right? Or to move you to the next place in the goal, whether it's a vision of governments, a vision of, service organizations, a vision of friendships, a vision of couples, a vision of partnerships of any kind. It's like, parents and children.
Mhm.
That's a big one.
Yeah. For
Those are high
sure.
stakes conversations,
Always, right?
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you create a win-win in a conversation?
You know, it's an interesting question because when you asked, I went to like three different places. And one place was the win is in actually having an understanding,
Mhm.
right? Depends on what that means. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Um, People aren't always going to agree.
Mhm.
So it's finding common ground if you can, or it's, figuring out the goal together, or it's just actually letting yourself and the person know that something actually took place here, like you actually heard each
Right.
other. Um,
Right.
the other piece, my other two just went out the window, but I'm trying to remember one of them. The win-win part. Yeah, so that also speaks to, so win-win is a wonderful concept, right? Everybody wins, it all goes well, everybody's happy, you know. But on the other side of win-win is conflict. It's how do I avoid conflict? So what
Mm-hmm.
position are you actually walking into that conversation in? Like,
Right.
where are you coming from? What's your starting point? If you're starting with conflict or the idea that there could be conflict or I could lose, it's already a tainted conversation, right?
Yep.
Because that's going to guide what you say, how you feel, how you respond to what that person is saying, which means actually you're not present,
Right.
right? And I know that wasn't your question, really. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
win-win it is like, how do I get a good outcome?
Right.
Right? The good outcome is being kind.
Yeah.
The good outcome is
Yeah.
listening,
It
being kind,
it's
having compassion, having it be okay to say what you think in a kind way and listening to what they want to say and allowing. And if they're not being kind, say, hey, you're not being kind. So I'm going
right.
to remove myself from this conversation, or let's give it another shot. Right? It's the I came up with like three words, like adult, neutral, positive, but it's the way of being in a conversation that allows you to maintain your self-respect and your boundaries while still having compassion and being willing to hear.
Yeah.
So there are those conversations where they're just conversations. Then there are those conversations where people are upset and then might be rude or blamey or whatever. But we all always have the right to say, hey, but in a nice way, in a clear, calm, I'm in my power, in my body kind of way, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm really not available to have you speak to me that way.
Yeah.
I am really happy to have you tell me how you feel,
Yeah.
but not that way. And if you can't do it, we can talk another time. Happy to hear, right? But no, that's not going to work for me today.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I think a lot of people feel like it's not okay that
No.
they like once you've entered in a conversation, it's kind of like you have to stick it to the end no matter what. Um,
And that, when you say what really messes it up, that can really mess it up,
yeah.
right? Because it's kind of like the cartoon, right? Where, the cat and the dog are spinning around and nobody has taken a pause
Yeah.
to say, wait a minute, what's actually happening here? Like, we're not even talking about the original. We're just kind of doing our reactive thing.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Definitely
What kind
have
of what kind of conversations are we talking about when we say that?
yeah, well, I'm thinking in particular I had an employer going back like more than
Mm,
10 years.
mm,
Not my current employer, but I was resigning for very good reasons. One
uh-huh.
being they were bouncing my paychecks. So,
Oh,
and
that's a good
at the
reason.
time I was in such like, it's a good reason, right? That alone is probably a good reason. So, it was a husband and wife team,
Mhm,
and the husband managed doing the paychecks, and I
mm,
worked closely with the wife.
mm,
And so when I approached her, I was just resigning, giving my, couple weeks
yeah.
of notice. She responded very aggressively and we got into a screaming match, which is
Ooh.
definitely not my typical, behavior, but at the
Yeah.
time felt just very trapped, and
Yeah.
lots of threats going back and forth, and her saying I was trying to ruin her marriage and I was making up stories, and
Wow.
so it was very, I feel like I thought in the moment I was standing in my power by, you know,
Yelling
planting my
back.
feet and giving it right back to her.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if it were to happen today, I probably would have just, like you said, remained neutral at her escalation and said, okay, so I was going to give you 2 weeks notice, but if this is what I can anticipate for my remaining time, then I'm leaving right now.
Right. Right.
And that's it.
Exactly. Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know.
And so clearly that was about her stuff. It had nothing to do with you.
Oh, yes, for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I also think that I probably should have had
Mm-hmm.
a conversation earlier on to say, like, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable,
Right. Right. Of course.
you
Of
know?
course. Yeah.
And I just don't think I had the knowledge or the wherewithal to figure that out at that time.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a powerful story because um, it really speaks to how people got so charged up and especially when they feel attacked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on some level she felt attacked, and on another level you were being attacked. So, yeah, we're gonna respond to that, all right,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
don't speak to me that way, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure, well, thank you for letting me know that today is actually the best day for me to leave.
And I'm on my way,
Yeah,
but that's the difference when you're a little bit younger, a little bit less
that's right.
experienced in the world,
That's
and
right.
I just didn't know a different way to approach it, and felt very trapped, and like I wasn't
Sure.
able to ask for what I needed, which was to leave, to go to do
Right.
something different.
And you were doing that, really, right? I mean, you were leaving. You were giving them notice.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's tricky because I think people of all ages do get stuck in those kind of moments, right? And then afterwards, you kind of go, okay, wait a minute. What was that about? Like, how could I've, was there any alternative? Like, what was happening? Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think at that point I didn't see an alternative. I just spent like exactly what you said, that anxiety, that like rehearsal of
Yeah.
how it was going to go.
Right. And
It was
then
about
she
what I
shocked
expected.
you. She was like, "Oh no, it's not going to go that way. I'm just going to yell at you.
Yeah.
I'm going to blame you for my life."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all a learning experience, of course.
For sure. For sure. Oh my goodness.
So funny enough, I've talked about it. I've written about it, but I called it, my second divorce. It was a year
Oh,
after my
oh
actual
no.
divorce that I did this, but I called it my second divorce because it really kind of felt that way. So, and I know that's a hot topic for you.
It is. It is. It's an exciting topic for me, weirdly to say. But
And not weird to me. Having been through it, it's not weird, but
yeah, so I've been through it too. And
yeah.
I developed a program called Divorce Well and Thrive many years ago. It's a coaching program for people to divorce well. And in the next maybe month or two, I have a book coming out called Divorce Well and Thrive that really teaches people. See, I think this book is called Divorce Well and Thrive, and it's about divorce, and it's kind of a handbook for, thinking about it. Yeah, it's kind of like the first chapter is called "So You Think You Really Want to Get a Divorce?" And so you go through kind of this query. But It's very instructional, but it's also tells a lot of stories and teaches my techniques. And I think that there's a piece of our conversation today that's sort of pivotal in that conversation, in those kinds of conversations. Those are the kind of, from a family perspective, the most high stakes conversations you can have. And but the wisdom in it really is wisdom that if you do the technique in the book, you can live your life entirely in a lot more alignment, very differently. And that's really exciting because you can take that into any relationship and any experience. So a piece of that was kind of the how do you call it, the basis for one of my new creations, which is Enlightened Communication Institute.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, again, it's really about, there's a piece of it that's personal, things like the Divorce Well and Thrive coaching program, accelerated breakthrough coaching that I created, and so on. But there's another part that's about mission-driven organizations and how do people actually who really want to impact the world have those conversations in a way that's going to be successful. So that we can change the environment. We can, people who are fighting can talk better.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think it's so very needed, and I also think that we have such a fast moving culture and society now, with the digital age and everything happens so quickly that we need to be able to get to those critical conversations faster than used to be necessary because things are just happening at such a rapid pace.
Yeah. And so, what I love about some of the work I'm doing is it really helps people to move into those positions very quickly. So, there are some things that take a long time to solve and heal and so on, but there are also ways to do both, right? To come into a position in yourself, like putting your attention on your feet. Well, if you put your attention on your feet and you feel like you're present in the body, well, that only took, a second or two. If you really do it and you do like my whole thing, it might take, 15 minutes initially, and then you can do it in a minute, right? So it's kind of like, how do we get into a position where we can be available for the most pivotal conversations in our lives or in our communities or in our, on the planet, so that, maybe the environment doesn't have to, global warming doesn't have to go so fast. And maybe, people don't have to be at war, or maybe we solve, certain aspects of homelessness, or, where there's some kind of way to bring people together where positioning stops them. Because a lot of times it's positioning, right? Like even in divorce or even in, businesses or, no, I want it this way. No, I want it this way. No, this contract has to go that way. And I'm not going to give this up. And it's positioning, right? So it's how do we move beyond positioning into collaboration?
Right.
And how do we get what you're talking about, which is the win-win?
Yeah.
From that perspective.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested in all of it, but
but getting quicker to that dialogue.
Exactly.
And that true engagement in the moment, in the conversation versus just like you said, this is what I want. No, this is what I want. And it's just more people stating what they want. It's like the text. This is me. I'm not reading you.
Yeah. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But I think that when people begin to take a shortcut into what is the feeling behind what I'm doing? Does it match? Right? Like if I'm talking about having a positive outcome in some way, but I'm really angry, it's going to be really hard.
It's going to be hard
to bring that positive outcome unless I look at what's happening with that and figure out something to do with it.
Yeah.
And that's really understanding parts of self. I mean, we could have another whole hour conversation, right? But
yeah, no, I was thinking too while you were saying that, like, I think it's also like bringing in the self-care, like who you show up as,
Right.
You've already shown up and having cared for yourself and done all the work to feel good and be present because you're not feeling at a loss. And feeling secure in yourself as a human being and as deserving, like you were talking about before, not getting stuck on like, this person has all the power and I don't have the power.
Right. Not on loss and vulnerability. I think the part of Enlightened Communication Institute is also a course that I created called Enlightened Communication through Luminous Living. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's looking at how do you actually maintain and align yourself with your central core self, which is your power, right? And then how are you in conversation with the parts of yourself so that you actually understand what is pushing you. And then that part of you, that central core, can kind of direct instead of having the vulnerable part direct or the happy part direct or the scared part direct or the angry part. So it's an archetypal system, but it's a very simple one. So that it's like the protector, the connector, the scribe, all the parts that kind of show up when we're having one of those conversations and could take the lead.
Yeah.
But when like you're saying, when you understand yourself, then you can direct the conversation that you're having.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
It is exciting. And I am legitimately very excited for your book that's coming out. I can't wait to read it. And I can't wait to have a conversation when you come back about it and we can talk more divorce. Yeah, I know. It's a
weird
two ladies
thing to say, right? Let's have a great
we're going to talk about divorce. It's going to be fun.
Well, but if you can find joy in that, you can find joy in anything, right?
That is definitely for sure. That is for sure. So what else would you like people to know? What do you have going on that they can join you in? How can they best connect with you?
Probably the best way they can connect is through the website, which would be yourinspiredchoices.com. And they can just go to the go button on the top right to get on the mailing list. Or they can go to the contact page and pick something that they're interested in, that they want to know about more specifically. For anybody who's listening who might be thinking about divorce, pretty soon I'm going to be offering a boot camp, a 4-week boot camp that will be kind of quick and to the point. So that's going to be coming up soon. They might want to email if they're interested in that. And that's really the best way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for joining us. This was a really cool conversation about high stakes conversations.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. You really pulled out some great strategies. And I think, as people were listening in, they could pick up on some things that they could very simply apply right now in the conversations that they're having.
I hope so.
Yeah. And I always think that that's such a great way to go because, getting into our body, the breathing, the planting our feet on the ground, those are things we have available to us no matter where we are, no matter who we're with. And like you said, it's not very apparent that that's what you're doing.
Right.
But it can be super, super helpful.
And just remember that we do have choice. Right?
That's true. That's true. I love it. Well, Liz, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to hearing all about Divorce Well and Thrive when it comes out.
Thank you, Kelly.
We'll look forward to our fun conversation.
I know.
It probably will be.
I'm sure. Well, here we are, right?
Here we are. It is what it is, right? All right. And I wish you all well. Stay curious, everybody. Bye now.